This week on the Unabated podcast, it's time to get into March Madness, and we bring on Jason Lisk of Pool Genius to talk about filling out your brackets, setting up your survivor pools, and of course, betting on the big dance. It's a great show. Let's get to it.
If the guy goes unabated, that's the new word, unabated. That's too big a word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm assuming that's the biggest word I know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into the Unabated podcast. I'm Thomas Viola, and joining me, as always, Mr. Unabated himself, Captain Jack Andrews. Jack, it's March Madness time. We have a great show today. Jason Lisk from Pool Genius, of course, a part of Team Rankings. He's going to be joining us, and a very special offer for everybody listening to this episode here. If they go to poolgenius.com/unabated, they're going to get 55% off of Pool Genius's tools to help you dominate your March Madness bracket contests, Calcutta contests, survivor pools, you name it. They're going to help you. I'm jazzed for March Madness to be back here. Yes, I know there's technically more betting opportunities in an average Saturday college basketball slate, but come on. It's the most fun time of year. Everything's staggered. Everybody's watching college hoops back to back to back to back all day long. This is part of the fun part of our jobs here. Like, yes, we get to talk about and bet on sports for a living, but these are the events that make it special.
I think one of the things that makes March Madness so exciting is that there's so many ways to bet it. And we're going to kind of get into that when we talk to Jason. Like, look, you can be betting office pools. You can be betting props on the tournament without even knowing who the teams are. You could be betting the individual games and in-game betting and first half, second half. The race to 15 is a hugely popular bet for the tournament. I don't even understand why, but it has taken a life of its own. People love to bet the race to 15 prop. And then you get into Calcuttas and survivors. And so, yeah, there is a lot of ways to make March Madness just a little bit crazier.
There really are, but we've got a couple, just under a week, I guess, just over a week, I guess you could say, until March Madness really kicks off. But what's already kicked off have been our market-based projections for player props at Unabated. And I have to say, tiny sample size here. Certainly nothing statistically significant yet, but through a week plus of using these in my own personal betting, I don't have hardcore metrics in front of me yet. I got to go look back at my stuff, but I've definitely noticed I am hitting more blending in the market-based projections than I was in the NBA season leading up to this point.
Yeah, Tom, you and I, we talk a lot offline about different bets and things like that. And one of the things that's always bothered me about our prop screen is sometimes it shows these fantastical edges. And anyone that's worked in prop betting knows that, yes, there are some fantastical edges in props. But often, if you see a large edge on a prop, you have to say, well, what am I missing, right? And well, who knows best about what you're missing than the market in general? So by being able to kind of blend in market-based projections, you're able to kind of steer yourself back on the road towards the middle of the road rather than, living out on the fringes of the road where you might roll off a cliff or something. So I think that's the best thing about it is it helps to normalize your prop numbers. It helps to keep you steered towards positive EV decisions. And I've noticed a change myself. Like I have passed on some bets that otherwise I would have taken, and I have bet some things that otherwise I might have missed had it not been to identify there was a market outlier out there. So yeah, I think they're a huge benefit to anyone that's using the Unabated tools. They're available at both the tiers, it's formerly the Essentials tier. We now call it the Pick'em Pools and Props tier,
Props,
PPP.
pools.
And I always get the order wrong, but PPP.
Yep.
And then it's also available at the premium tier as well.
Yeah, and they're fantastic if you're looking for a way to get into prop betting and get started. It's a great place to start, of course, at unabated.com here. But that's enough about those, although still very pleased, been very happy. But we're here to talk about March Madness. I think that it's time we get right into it. Should we bring on Jason Lisk from Pool Genius?
Let's do it.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome on into the show from Pool Genius. Jason Lisk joins us now. Jason, thank you so much for being with us here today. It is great to have you. It is tournament time, so I know how busy your life must be right now.
Yeah, absolutely great to be back with you. It is a busy time of year, but we love it. because hey, we're working on basketball, so that can't be too bad.
I mean, this is the greatest time in the sports calendar here when we're gonna get all those back-to-back March Madness games. Is there anything more fun than weekend one and building your brackets and watching them immediately get busted?
Oh, it's all a whirl and it's all great. Conference tournament week's great. Straight into the brackets, straight in to the first round. Just a whirlwind. So many good matchups, teams that haven't played each other, small schools, big schools, all of it. It's great stuff.
What does your day-to-day look like right now?
Yeah, so right now it's just like mixing and matching all sorts of things. It's working on content uh to kind of advertise and get people to know about us. It's working on analyzing the teams. I spend time I've already done 40 teams. So basically every team that I had assessed is this safely in the field. By last Friday, I had taken an early dig into them and had my notes, kind of injuries, how their season went, kind of, strengths and weaknesses. We did some analysis on, styles and which styles have worked best in the tournament in the past, what kind of comparable teams. And so now it's more like we're getting the auto bids rolling in. And so I'll be digging into those. Don't really want to dig too deep into them until they've actually clinched a tournament berth, because then I could guess wrong on which teams I invest my time in. So we'll do that this week and then clean up and assess teams because there's injuries. Injuries come up, Kansas, for example, all sorts of injury situations to be on top of that could impact our player, our team ratings that we go with by Sunday night to run our simulations for the tournament. So that's a big part of it. And then I'm just putting in, we've got like suggestions for futures, all sorts of stuff where I'm digging into that stuff as well. While I'm analyzing the teams, I'm kind of have my power rating and I'm seeing where I think there's value.
So when it comes to March Madness betting, there's really three avenues that people can go down if they want to get their money down. You've got obviously the classic, what everybody does, the bracket pools. You've got betting on the games, whether it's betting on the actual games themselves, futures, props, what have you, or of course, Calcutta and survivor betting. Now, we're going to talk about all three with you here, how your tools at Pool Genius can help. But let's start off with that most common one. Let's start off with the bracket pools. My first question for you there: what are the most common mistakes that people make? You've written some great articles over at Pool Genius about these common mistakes. What are the things that you see people doing wrong when they're filling out their brackets?
Yeah, some of the primary things that people do wrong, they assume they need to pick way more upsets than they do. You can be There's so many combinations. I think I wrote in one article, like you could pick a Final Four combination just taking like all like 1 through 12 seeds and just throwing them into a mixer, and you would have more combinations than you could fill in the lifetime of human history on how a Final Four could end up. There's so many combinations that you could pick from one seed in one region, the 3 seed in another, all this stuff. And so people get caught up like, oh, you can't pick like a 1 and a 2 and a there's so many combinations you can build from just like the top 3 seed lines and have different Final Fours and different winners. And you'll be fairly unique from a lot of people as long as you're not on the absolute chalk. You can build like you can have like the second, third, fourth favorites and be somewhat unique from most people.
So you mentioned that the pool size gets to
Mhm.
be a large impact there, right? So the smaller
Absolutely.
the pool, the more likely that just picking favorites could win a bracket. Whereas the larger the pool, you'll need to kind of have a little bit more creativity and maybe not just, just take all the chalky teams.
Yep.
Where's that dichotomy work itself in? Where do we start to need a more diverse bracket? What size pool?
I don't know that there's a specific like cutoff. It does increase with pool size. As you get bigger, you're going to need more. Let's just say this, you're going to need a better score on average to beat more people. And so if you're playing 100, you're going to need a better score than if you're playing 10 on average. Now, that doesn't mean there could be a group of 10 where somebody got hot and scored as well as possible. But on average, you don't need to score quite as high. In a 1,000 person pool, in a 10,000, you're going to need to hit close to maybe not the nuts of every game, but the nuts of like the champ pick, the finalist, you know, at least one of the other Final Four teams, and one key run to the Elite Eight, something like that. You're going to have
Mhm.
to hit like a poker hand, like close to the nut hand as you get into thousands. You don't need to do that with like 100 people. You might be able to be one of 5 entries that has the champ, and then you just need to beat those other 5 entries head to head on the other picks, and that can often be done by just having a lot of the favorites.
Now, scoring matters though, right? Like if
Yep.
you have a pool where half the score is if you pick the winner of the entire tournament, then you're more focused on that. Where if it's like you just get 1 point per win, it's a different type of approach, correct?
Absolutely. So when we say that, the standard score, or the most frequent score, we'll say the common, and I think it's because it was what was adopted by ESPN back when they ran the bracket challenge, but it's basically doubles each round: 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. So the champion gets as many points as all 32 first round picks combined. And so you get a champ, you get 63 points, I believe is the number, if you nail the champ pick. Well, you have to get that right. You're not going to win a pool unless it's a year where an 8 seed won it and nobody in your small pool picked them. You're going to have to hit the champ in that kind of pool. In an upset pool, where you say, like, there are pools out there, brackets, we see all kinds. There are brackets where you get points for the seed number. In those pools, you'd be a fool to pick the 1 seed to the championship game and get 6 points. They exist like that. And I've seen bad brackets in them. Your goal there is like, man, I want to hit a 5 seed or worse to the final four. I want to hit like, you know, maybe a 7, an 11 to the Elite Eight, and you'll rack up 44 points if you hit an 11 seed to the final four or whatever. And you just destroy people by maybe getting one key call right that nobody else picked. So in those, you might get 60 games wrong, but do you get the right number to actually outscore people and stay ahead of them? So there's some weird scoring rules, and you just have to know your scoring rule and not worry about what the actual bracket looks like. Does it score well in your system?
So I know from our Discord, we've had a couple users that have already been asking, "Hey, who's got some links to some pools where I can enter?" There's quite a few bettors out there that like to kind of, I guess, wade into the pool betting, I guess you could call that.
Yep.
Uh, I generally see that a lot of people tend to overlook kind of bracket pools as sort of being like a free thing with friends and family. But there are some big money pools out there, right?
There are some big money pools. I'm not sure who I can advertise, but there are some big money pools out there. I think if you look, I mean, I'll throw one. Fantasy players are probably familiar with LeagueSafe. LeagueSafe is just a classified. They aren't actually running pools, but they have like a classified listing. I found pools there. Like people will advertise, join my pool, and then they're not endorsing that pool, but it's a place you can go find probably 10, 15 March Madness pools run by various people around the country. That's one that I've used to find people. There's sites popping up. I know this year that are running more and more contests nationally. They're out there, and they're of all types. See, I think if you search, if you ask around, you'll find a variety of pool types that exist and that you can get into, that you don't just have to know the person in the pool to necessarily get into.
Now, how about for the people that are maybe like going to enter their office pool and you've got maybe 40 people in the pool, standard scoring? What would you say is the optimal strategy for them? Is it you're still picking a lot of the chalk? Are you going with a little bit more upsets? I know you already mentioned that there isn't really a hard cutoff for when you want to start going a little less popular, but what would
Yeah.
you say for the person who just wants to be in their office pool?
Yeah, I think it depends on the year and what we're going to see this year. I think is like a Connecticut's going to be very popular. They're also probably going to be the favorite, but it's just a question of how much more of a favorite are they versus their popularity. And I don't know the answer to that yet. I have a sense they'll be pretty popular than that. Defending national champ, they've looked good. And Purdue lost in the first round. Arizona lost in the first round. A lot of the other contenders have never won a title and have some of those narrative factors that people trying to shy away from. But I'm curious to see where the actual numbers end up. So I guess my thought is in a small pool, I'm not giving up value. I'm not giving up like that much win equity, even if a team's popular, but I might give up a little bit. As you get larger, you're going to give up more. Like you might fade a team and take, hey, I'm taking a team that has half the chance to win, but I'm willing to do that because of just the extreme popularity. In a small pool, there's an argument to made to be being on some chalk, especially if you think you have an advantage elsewhere. Like I'm going to pick like some other people will and beat them in the rest of the bracket. And if that makes sense, like sometimes that works out as a strategy that we see in really small pools.
Now, when it comes to actually betting on some of these games, we are, after all, a sports betting contest. Let's
Yeah.
talk about a little bit about a sports betting podcast. Let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that. What are some of the tools that you have for just straight up trying to beat spreads, totals, and money lines and futures?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the spreads. I would say less totals just because the way we do our analysis, unless you want to dig into the numbers there. But like so when I'm digging into these teams and when David Hess and I are studying these teams, what we're doing is we're looking at things like injuries, past injuries, like was the point guard out for 6 games midseason and the team was 4 points worse when he was out? Because then we want to actually bump them up. We're like, they're better than their raw number because when they're fully healthy, they're about a point better or whatever. So we're making those kind of adjustments internally and we're digging into teams. And so I would say we're doing that research. We lay it out in some team notes. There's a team notes tab within the bracket product where we'll actually list, here's our raw power rating on the team. Here's the adjustment we made. You can disagree with it. We kind of give the reasons. We'll have bullet points. We'll say this player missed time. This team plays, they're defensively skewed. Their offense struggles, and teams in this seed range who have looked like them have struggled in the past, been upset at times. So we've bumped them down a bit to take account that risk or whatever. We'll explain kind of why we made the adjustments. You can agree or disagree, but we're giving you some numbers and you could use those to like do individual game, like take it and say, okay, they think that team's 3.4 based on the raw rating, it'd be 6, but they adjusted the teams in such a way that they think it's a closer matchup than the raw numbers. And you could certainly take a look at those numbers, use those to help your own betting, knowing that we made some adjustments based on injuries, style, lineup changes.
Now, how are you feeling as far as the expected field this year? I mean, last year pre-tournament there was big value on UConn. They ended up coming in as a 4
Yeah.
seed, 16-1. We obviously don't know seedings yet. We're doing this well
Yep.
before Selection Sunday here. Are there any teams that you're keeping an eye on that have some value?
There are a lot of question marks, I think, entering this and some teams that I'm certainly eyeing. And I'll lay out some of the reasons. The first one that jumps out is Auburn. Auburn is probably going to get a 4 or 5 seed. They're that traditional team that they've they haven't played poorly against top teams. Actually, if you look at their power rating, they're just as good. They've happened to bunch they've lost close games on the road against other good teams, which isn't necessarily from a predictive standpoint a bad thing, but from a resume standpoint, the committee's like, oh, they don't have any big wins. And so they're going to be like Houston 2 years ago, who was a top 10 team as a 5 seed. They're going to be like UConn last year, a top 10 team as a 4 seed. I think Auburn's that team. You don't want to have them show up in your bracket as a 1 seed because you might only be favored by 2 or 3 points if you play them in the Sweet 16. That's one. Who knows which bracket they're showing. Creighton is an interesting one. Creighton, I think, at full strength, they've had a period where they had some injuries and they had a key player out at Thanksgiving. They had their worst performance then. Creighton beat UConn recently. At their best, I think they're a national title winner. There's a couple of things. They are dead last in turnovers forced on defense. That has traditionally been a fairly negative indicator for top seeds. Like we've seen top seeds that don't turn people over when they get in the tournament have difficulty getting stops. Creighton may be an exception, but I'm going to study them because otherwise they're very interesting because their number is a little longer. And I think they could be a 3 and maybe even get to a 2, depending on how the Big East tournament goes. They're one to watch. Marquette, the Kolick injury. That price would be nice if I knew Marquette at like plus 2,500 over 2,000 would be nice if you knew Kolick was healthy, but you don't. And that's a high variance one. So that's another one. And then I would say, so I talked about Auburn. Kentucky's on the rise. Arizona's on the rise. I think the top contenders are accurately priced as the leading contenders. But whether a team like Kentucky, maybe a Duke, Auburn, and Creighton are that group that I'm like, okay, I want to see where they get seated, how they play this week, because each of them has a thing where at their best they're probably better than their raw number.
As someone who's holding futures right now on both Creighton and Kentucky, I love hearing you mention both of those teams right now. But as far as the field in general, do you feel like this is another one of those more wide open tournaments where we could see a wide range of outcomes? It doesn't really feel like even a team like Purdue, and yeah, some of it is that narrative from last year. It doesn't feel like there's a true juggernaut, although, quite frankly, are the juggernaut days simply behind us with the way college basketball is now?
I mean, maybe there's not going to be like it's not going to be Kentucky in 2015
Yeah,
who didn't win it, but
yeah.
we're a heavy favorite. I mean, honestly, we haven't had the chalk favorite win in a while. Honestly, it's been like the second or third or lower than that, somewhere in the top 10 who has won it. I think there's a pretty clear top five. And I think it'll be interesting to see which two get put in the same region. That could be Tennessee with Arizona, it could be North Carolina with Arizona, or it could be one of those Tennessee or North Carolina getting put with like UConn, which could create different dynamics in a bracket. I think there's a pretty clear top five to me. I think then, like we mentioned Creighton, we mentioned Auburn. There's like another five that I think are national title worthy, and you could see scenarios where they run the table. I actually think there's some weak fives and sixes out there. I think there's some strong 10s and 11s potentially. So we could see the middle of the bracket actually get destroyed by having the seeds flipped, and you might see like some 9s, 10s, 11s favored when we get the bracket revealed.
I'm just hoping
So
for another Syracuse Cinderella run here.
I knew there was going to be a Syracuse
Yeah,
mention.
I don't think it's happening.
We're not making it. We would need to
Yeah.
win the ACC.
Yes, I agree with that.
Um, so the third pillar of betting in March Madness is Calcutta and now even Survivor betting. So uh, those of you who have kind of been around for the run of Unabated here, you know that we've had a few articles on running a Calcutta. We've done Calcutta betting in March Madness in the past with Rufus and the Bet the Process Calcutta, as well as some golf Calcuttas. Jason, I understand you guys have some tools for both Calcuttas and now for Survivor as well.
Yes, we do have a package. You can just get brackets, or you can get brackets plus, which includes the ability to also see tools for a slight upgrade in Calcutta and Survivor. Calcutta, it's going to take our projections, our round odds, our estimates, how far each team advances, and apply it to whatever scoring system you say the points are worth in each round, and give you kind of a percentage of the total pot for each team estimate. And then you, of course, need to know how much does my contest typically spend? How much, what's the total pot size? What do teams generally go for? But we'll have that. It's an interactive tool where you can actually put the number in and it recalculates as you add teams to the number during a live draft. So you could use it that way. Survivor is a contest we love in the NFL. March Madness, if you've never played, I would highly encourage it. If you like to pick upsets late in the bracket, it's actually better. Like we talked about how some people pick too many upsets in bracket pools. March Madness survivor pools are crazy. And by that, I mean, unlike an NFL survivor where you have 17 weeks, 18 weeks, and you're always taking favorites, and it's just which one and how do I allocate my schedule so I pick the right favorite each week. In March Madness, as you get into it, every pick you have to think, I don't want to use a team that I think can win the national title that I need in the Final Four in the championship game, because to win a big survivor pool, you got to make it to the all 6 rounds. And so you have to have a team to win it with your last pick. If you run out of picks, which happens, you're done. It's as if you took a loss. So you have to do future planning, but you also have to take chances. That chance could be, I'm going to pick a 1 seed in round 1 who is more of a lock to win because I think they aren't going to make the Final Four. Kansas would have been a great example of that last year. They were in a tough West. You'd be like, okay, I'm just going to take their win and hope they get knocked out. But you're putting yourself at risk. You're taking 1 seed, or you take the 6 seed, the 5 seed, and you're more at risk of an upset right away and getting knocked out. So it's a very intriguing game where you have to think, how am I going to balance trying to advance now with making sure I have good options when I get to the Elite Eight, Final Four, and championship game, not knowing who will be there. So, and because you get down to 4 games by Elite Eight, maybe 2 per day, you might have a situation where everybody's on the favorite because they haven't used them, and you can pot odds beat them by having the underdog and being like one of a few who has the underdog. If you get an outright underdog win, the pool may be wiped out. So that's what makes it fun, is it has a lot of those scenarios where you kind of got to pick your spots. You're never going to get through a March Madness Survivor without ever taking an underdog, probably after the Sweet 16.
It's also such a different vibe because of the fact that it's not like an NFL Survivor where you're losing one team a week. You're losing half the field every round.
Yeah, like I'll give you like Missouri. I'm a Mizzou alum, right? So you're talking about Syracuse. I'm confident my school is not going to be in the tournament this year, but they were last year, and they drew Princeton because Princeton knocked off Arizona. And Survivor participants loaded up on Missouri because they're like, oh, I'm never going to use Missouri in the Final Four. But the danger there is you get on the popular side, and Missouri losing wiped out like half of a survivor pool just with that one result. So if you were smart enough to pick a different team and avoid them, you did well.
I mean, that's something that we've talked about a lot on NFL Survivors. It's not about survive and advance. It's about playing against what everybody else is doing. And I don't,
Absolutely. You have to think about how others will pick, and you have to plan ahead. So it's a combination of all those factors. Planning ahead, your chances to win now, and how many people are going to be opposite you or on another popular team.
and I don't mean by playing against fade everybody else necessarily. It's just you have
Right.
to be aware of what everyone else is doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you win pools by beating other people,
Yep.
by them getting picks wrong. And when you have a situation where a lot of people are going to be on one side, you want to make a pick that allows you to root against that team that they're heavily on, for sure.
Now, I actually used the Survivor tool last year, and I was not in a Survivor contest. One of the nice features of that Survivor tool is it'll give you a percentage to make the Sweet 16, the Elite
Yes.
Eight, the Final Four, and I use that to bet props.
Oh, nice.
You can find a lot of props. Will this team make the Final Four? Yes, no.
Mhm.
And that's probably, if we had like a fourth pillar of March Madness betting, is there's a lot of tournament props. And I know there's a lot of people that are in states
Absolutely.
now where the NCAA has made it so you can't bet player props, for better, for worse, whatever. But you can still bet tournament props. And
Absolutely.
so shop around. One of the articles we have up on Unabated is I gave the example, I think it was 2 years ago, where it was the number one seeds to make the Final Four. And if you did just a little bit of line chopping, you locked in, I think it was like an 18% ARB across like three different books. So definitely when those prop bets come out after, in the evening on Selection Sunday, check all your books. And you can use tools like the Survivor tool at Pool Genius to, figure out Final Four odds for a lot of teams as well.
That's right. Yeah, I've used it. I'll give you some examples of props I know we had last year and that I picked. There was one with the total seed number of the Final Four teams, and you can use our total round advancement numbers for every team, and kind of, because all that is, it takes some math, but it takes a little Excel work, but it's basically the odds of a teams above a certain number, and you do all the multiplication across all four regions, and you get a final number. And so we've correctly hit that 2 years in a row. We've had the over both years, and it hit. Um, a lot of times, I'll just tell you from my personal experience, I, we love to pick upsets, but I am better at identifying which teams are vulnerable to an upset than picking the team that will upset them. And so that always screws me in a bracket. Like, I'm like, last year, I did not like Purdue, but I didn't know which of Florida Atlantic and Memphis I would pick. Well, I was able to use our advancement odds to instead bet Purdue to miss the Sweet 16, which you could get at a good plus number. And I used our advancement numbers to help identify that value. So you can use, there's a lot of make or miss Sweet 16 numbers. There's a lot of like combo props, how many teams from a certain conference will make the Final Four. Lots of interesting props that you can take our numbers and probably do a multiplication and figure out kind of what our number would be, and assess it that way.
Jason, my final question for you, of course, is the most basic one. Who's cutting down the nets?
Oh man. Oh, whew. Put me on the spot. Okay.
Yep.
We won't hold you to this.
Yeah, this is not.
Yeah,
We're
I
not
mean,
going to
'cause
be
this
putting this up
this
and going,
may
"Oh, look
not
what
be
he
how I
picked."
pick a bracket because I'm picking against people, and I
Right.
think Connecticut is the favorite. It would obviously be the first repeat champion, I believe, since Florida. Um, they have probably they may not be power rated in the raw numbers, but I think once you take all the games that Klingon missed, and I think I'm trying to think with the other guard, they had like 10 games where one of their key players missed, and they're a lot better. They're the number one team fully healthy. So they'd be my pick in a vacuum. That said, it would not surprise me if like Arizona won. Team that's lost early the last 2 years. They are a much balanced team. Tennessee, vastly different than the Tennessee teams we've seen recently. The recent Tennessee teams have been terrible on offense. The emergence of Dalton Knecht has changed this team. They're great on defense, but they can actually score. So that wouldn't surprise me. They would be that would kind of be my top, and then Houston, of course, who is power rated number one, who can turn people over. Those would be my top four, if I were to kind of circle who I think will win the title.
Well, thank you so much for all of the advice here. Thank you so much for being on the show and giving us some of your time. I know that you are super busy this week,
Oh,
especially, and it's only going to get worse before the tournament gets started. But hey, this is what we live for.
it's
This
great
is,
fun.
yeah,
We get to talk, like I said, college basketball. I get to look at teams and talk about, turnover rates and all sorts of fun stuff, and then go watch them play. It'll be fun.
yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. Always love coming on. Love what you do. And good luck in the tournament, no matter if you use our tools or not. Use a smart process, and I think you can get most of the way there doing a smart process. Of course, I'm proud of what we do with full numbers. I think us making the team adjustments is an improvement over somebody like KenPom, which are just raw numbers without injuries accounted for. But those will get you most of the way. Market odds are good. Use those, all that stuff. But yeah, good luck in March Madness. Check us out at Pool Genius. Been great to be on with you guys.
Well, Jason, you beat me to it. I was going to ask where we could where people could go if you wanted to plug your stuff, but of course, head to poolgenius.com/unabated and you can get 55% off of the Pool Genius tools for this March Madness tournament. You want to talk about a plus EV bet? That's one where you can lock in a win right away before you even head to the counter to start betting some stuff. And of course, you can check us out at unabated.com as well, just to have your eye on the odds screen at all times during this tournament. But you can find all of Jason's fantastic work at PoolGenius.com and on Twitter at Jason Lisk. Everybody, best of luck. Jason, one more time, thank you so much for your time today. Best of luck to you and to everyone in the tournament. Let's cash some tickets. We'll see you next time.